Thank you very much, Senator Tillis. I think we're going to be joined by Senator Coons, but I'll ask a few questions here. I just want to clarify one thing and then maybe give you a break. Chair Khan, I'll go over to Mr. Cantor, who just looks like he has stuff to say. I don't know. On your question about sort of looking back at mergers and things like that, and you answered it because you were getting a lot of questions, but I just think it's really important to note. So a lot of us are concerned about some of the acquisitions that, say, Facebook made. I often wonder if, in the words of Mark Zuckerberg in an email, in fact, he once wrote, "I'd rather buy than compete." We'll never know what bells and whistles Instagram may have developed, but they bought them. And those cases, actually, that Facebook case, you said this, was actually brought under the Trump administration, under your predecessor. And does it look back at some of those mergers? Do you want to explain this? Because the allegation, I think, was made about you. But in fact, while I don't mind that they look back at something like that, because actually people within the Obama administration, like Gene Sperling, have said they wish they would have looked back at that, looked at those more carefully. Do you want to comment about that and what the case was that they brought back then, the Trump administration?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this is just another indication of the strong bipartisan concern that we see on these issues. So that Facebook lawsuit was filed at the end of 2020. It alleged that Facebook's acquisitions of Instagram and WhatsApp were unlawful, an unlawful monopoly maintenance scheme. It also alleged that certain types of platform conduct had been unlawful. And in as much as Instagram and WhatsApp were acquisitions that were now made many, many years ago, that is something that would constitute looking back and addressing transactions that had already been consummated. That is something that is permitted under our statutes, and this was not the first time that the FTC has gone back and identified subsequently that a transaction that at the time that it was proposed had not been blocked, subsequently that the FTC determined it had the evidence that it had been an unlawful transaction.
Okay, and so that was brought under Chair Simon then, right? And you're continuing that work.
That's correct. Shortly after I joined the commission, we got an unfavorable opinion from the court, but we were given leave to amend the complaint, and we're thrilled that in January, the court denied Facebook's motion to dismiss, and we're now proceeding to trial.
Okay, thank you. I know you can't discuss everything about that, but I appreciate that answer. Both the Justice Department and the FTC have said that they regularly bring enforcement actions against vertical mergers, which is important given that so many of the recent large proposed mergers, whether in healthcare, tech, or video distribution, are not horizontal mergers. Do you want to talk about your agency's approach, maybe Mr. Cantor, to merger enforcement related to proposed transactions that are horizontal?
Sure. Thank you, Senator. It's important for us to make sure that our enforcement posture matches market realities. And as our economy has transformed, the markets are more three-dimensional than they've ever been. And so while sometimes vertical characterizations are appropriate, more often than not, we're finding that markets are multi-sided, platform-oriented, and competition presents itself differently in those markets. It can be competition for the platform. It can be competition on the platform. It can be disruptive technologies that reduce the competitive moat that protects a platform, or other types of technologies across a wide range of industries. And so when we think about merger enforcement policy, we start with the question of how does competition in this market present itself? What are the competitive threats that might exist to a firm with market power? And does the merger, in fact, undermine competition? If the answer is yes, then we will investigate and follow the facts and law wherever they lead.
Okay, thank you. And there is, I referenced the vertical integration. There does seem to be this trend toward vertical integration in healthcare and in video content. What's driving those trends? What are the long-term implications for competition and consumers?
The long-term implications are significant, and I think it's extremely important that we're vigilant in understanding the extent to which mergers might threaten competition with respect to building moats, foreclosing competitors, and depriving interoperability. And so we are going to remain vigilant in our pursuit of all illegal mergers, and I think there's rich case law, particularly around trends toward concentration, that we will take guidance from. And I should also note that working very collaboratively with our friends at the FTC and then with our respective staffs, including many of our career staff, we are in the process of revising our guidelines to make sure that we are even better reflecting the rich body of case law that addresses mergers, horizontal and non-horizontal alike.
I know in January of this year, the FTC and the Antitrust Division announced a joint public inquiry into modernizing the merger guidelines to better detect and prevent anti-competitive mergers. I understand you received over 5,000 public comments. That's lovely. Would you give us an update on each comment? No, I'm kidding. Would you give us an update on where that project stands and when we should expect new merger guidelines? And in your view, is there a place in the merger guidelines to consider how workers would be affected?
I would just
Two separate questions.
Yes. As to the first question, I think reading those comments might be a filibuster strategy for inspired senator in the future. In any event, the project is underway. It's rigorous. It involves actually reading all of those comments, making sure that we absorb them, and then beyond that, making sure that we are consulting with the law first and foremost, and then speaking directly with our respective staffs. And so that process is pretty far along. We're working alongside very collaboratively with our friends at the FTC, and we hope to have an initial draft in the coming weeks or months.
Okay, thanks. I think we didn't run the clock, but I think I went 5-6 minutes. So next up, Senator Lee, and then Senator Coons has joined us. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Chairwoman Cohen, since your appointment as FTC chair, you've taken several steps that I think have diminished the